I am Kim Tracy of the Maxwell James Agency. Our intention is to connect fantastic professional speakers with conferences, trade shows, symposiums, corporate events, trainings, and seminars. And our guest with me this morning is Tom Allen of Opango in Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a great morning.
I am. It's a great morning here. I'm a Peyton
And
fan.
he is a Peyton fan, and we've been talking about the Broncos and the Super Bowl yesterday. So for those of you who do not know Tom, he did play football, as I think everybody in Texas pretty much has to play football.
Well, right. Only if you breathe, you play football. That's what you do here. I played football starting like in the YMCA when I was like 6 years old or something. So I played for years and years, but I didn't play after high school. I played, but I didn't like a lot of guys do. I just kind of let it.
And after football, what is your second passion, in life outside of work? What do you really enjoy doing?
Well, there are really two things. I like flying my airplane and I like playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad was a pilot and he took us all flying when we were really little. And I've just flown ever since. I don't remember ever not flying an airplane. But an airplane is just a perfect thing to do and get you away. And, you go spend $500 or $600 for lunch sometime. They call it the hamburger, but it's really not that. But our daughter lived in Florida for a while, and we were able to fly down there and visit with her. So flying's a big deal. And golf, too. I just took up golf it's been several years ago now. But golf is a great thing to relax. But not only that, you get to meet a lot of people, And so flying and golf are the two things that I find generate more business conversation than business ever thought about.
So true. So true. And our topic this morning that you emailed me is an entrepreneur's roadmap, what every entrepreneur needs to know about actually operating a business. For those who are going to be watching on YouTube, and I see that my friend Sajal Klee is signing in from Washington, D.C. Let's talk about your professional background so they understand your experience with startups and being an entrepreneur.
Well, I started out at Harris Corporation, which is a really big company. And, at Harris, we all learned how to produce products and produce commercially viable products. But then I went to my first startup in 1985. And since then, I've been in 7 startups. And I've had an unbelievable opportunity to work on things like digitizing the network early on with American Airlines. I've worked on Wi-Fi gateways when they were just a gleam in people's eye. I had the real opportunity to work on a voice over IP Class 5 feature server, prepaid calling cards, prepaid wireless, internet security. And, I wish I could have sat back a long time ago and planned that I would be able to get involved in those many really, really interesting and game-changing type technologies, but it worked out that way. And as a result of that, having been in several of these, I've learned some lessons along the way that I think everybody could benefit from. And around Dallas, I'm involved in a lot of technical type communities, and people seem to have a lot of curiosity about, okay, what really goes on in there? I mean, there's a lot of talk about it, but what really, really is going on? So that's what got me here with you today.
Okay. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is developing the business plan. Can you expound on this for me?
Well, here's the thing about the business plan. Most entrepreneurs, and I run into a lot of them, are just so excited about what they're doing, they can't imagine that everybody else isn't just as excited as they are. The thing is, though, is that investors are more interested in, can you build it, and can you sell it, and can you go to market with it, and can you execute on your company? And so when you see them in a pitch meeting or something, there's this disconnect between the entrepreneur trying to explain how cool this thing is, and the business and the investor trying to figure out if these guys know how to run this business. So, for instance, when you go in, a lot of times what the investors will do, I'll see them just turn right to the back page, which is the use of funds. Well, how boring is that for the entrepreneur? But they put it in there because they know the investor needs it. But the investor starts asking a lot of questions about it, and usually there's a stumble right there. So what I recommend for people to do is go get some mentors or other people that do not have any vested interest in their company to look this thing over. And for instance, I was a mentor at one of the local entrepreneur shops here in town, and me and another friend of mine, spent about half a day with these two young guys that were going out to give a pitch. In about 2 hours, we had them so mad. I'm surprised they didn't just get up and leave the room. They were so mad because we picked on their plan and picked on everything. Well, they went out and got $4 million. And they wrote me a really nice letter apologizing for getting mad and thanking me for giving them and telling them the things that they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear. And from what I understand, they did really quite well after that. So that's the big thing. Investors really just want to know that how are you going to make money and can you actually run this business? And that is not something that most entrepreneurs really want to honestly spend a lot of time on.
Very true. They want to spend time on the sexier stuff.
Right. Well, their product is interesting and they're so excited about it, they can't understand themselves. But if you're talking to an investor, like I was talking to one the other day, and he says, Tom, he said, you're a smart guy, but a lot of smart guys walk in here. And the thing is, you've got to convince us that you, in fact, can run this business and make money with it. And so, and you got to separate yourself from all the other smart people. And you do it through explaining how you can execute on the business to how you're actually going to make money and be interested in that. So if you're going in for a pitch, you've got to be able to explain what you're doing in about a minute. But the rest of that time is spent on the numbers and executing and your go-to-market strategies and things like that. And if you look at Shark Tank, those people come in there to Shark Tank, it's the same thing every time. They're so excited about what they're doing, they can't stand themselves. And those sharks give them about 2 minutes to explain it. And then they go, okay, how much sales do you have? How are you going to go to market with this thing? And if they don't find out that they have a scalable, extensible business, then they don't get an investment in it. So that's the first really big thing.
Okay. And that is, do you help people develop their business plans, or are you willing to mentor people and say, I'll take a look at something, but this is what's going to happen?
I do that a lot. And I do tell them what's going to happen. I tell them, look, well, because if they're, if they're not ready for it, then they're not ready for it. And if it just makes them mad, then, they're probably going to take any advice from me. But if you travel this road out a little further, once you have your business in place and you have a board of directors, I can tell you, standing in front of the board, when you have 20 minutes to explain your operation, they're not there to be your friend. They're there to ask questions and more questions, and they're not interested in how upset you get about it. They want to know, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and they ask questions that are a lot of times very uncomfortable.
And these can be trusted advisors that, like you said, I tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And it's kind of like the game yesterday. If you're not prepared for it mentally and emotionally, you probably shouldn't go down that road.
That's right. That's the deal, is that startups are hard. They're hard already. So when somebody tells you something that really bruises your ego and burns your pride, maybe you ought to just go have a cup of coffee and think, maybe there was a gem of wisdom in that. And maybe they've got a point. And so, and it may be this. I judge business plans at Texas A&M. They have a business plan competition. I do that for 4 universities here in Texas.
Okay.
And, the other important thing that these guys got to get when you're going through their business plan is maybe they can still accomplish their goal, but go at it a little differently. I had, there was a woman that presented a plan at Lamar University a couple of years ago, and she was going to have this kiosk. And she said, I'm going to have this kiosk, really great idea. And she said, I'm going to go to Walmart and I'm going to tell them that we're going to put this kiosk in their store, and I'll even give them a percentage of the profits. Well, me and this other guy in the room, both at the same time, said, you're not going to tell Walmart anything. Anybody that knows Walmart knows they tell you. They're the toughest negotiators on the planet. So we gave her some advice to take this kiosk and put it in front of beauty salons and places like that on the outside. So she's still doing the same thing, but she's not married to the idea of getting to Walmart. She's accomplish her goal. So that's the other thing, is they need to not be they need to think about their goal and their mission, but not be necessarily married to the idea of how it's going to all come out, and be willing to change what they're going to change.
Do you find that a lot of people, as they're even crafting their plan, are they pushing the cart before the horse?
Well, most of the time what they do is they're so excited about what they're doing. It's hard for them to imagine that the market is not there. But but here's the other thing about entrepreneurs that I think is a really good thing. They are, because they're so excited about it, when their family and friends are all looking at them like they're crazy for doing this, they really are able to stand up to the pressure of all of that and believe in what they're doing and stay after it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I would recommend they do in that case, if you can, is go back to have these trusted advisors who believe in what you're doing, because what has to happen is you got to be able to sort of express your fears to somebody, but you can't express those fears to your employees, to your investors, to the public, or anybody. So outside, you've just got to be the rock. You know what I mean? This is my idea. We're driving forward with it. I've got confidence in it. We're the rock. But you've still got to keep up with these advisors, and so you can get advice from them on how to spin your business or change it. Probably I'll give you another example from one of these business plan competitions. There's just 3 young men came in, and they had a really magnanimous idea. They were going to forego getting married and having families and get out of college and save all of their money so they could give it to underprivileged businesses to help them succeed. And I was sitting there thinking, this is like the most unbelievable thing that these young men are willing to do this.
Wow.
But the advice I gave them was this. I said, there's a lot of grant money available from the government for small businesses. What I would recommend you do is learn how to write grants. Learn how to connect all of these grant money to all these businesses you want to help, and go get married and have children, have a family, and have a life. And it's like you could see these 3 guys, like the relief that came over them that they could still accomplish their goal and not have to go out and give up the rest of their life over it.
Right.
But that's what I mean by, you don't want to get so married to your idea that you get so focused on it that you can't see the forest for the trees. So you get your plan together, you get some people who, been around a little while, who's been through this.
Old, that's what he means, old people.
Yeah, right. Well,
seasoned professionals.
I was at a meeting the other day, and I heard there was a woman up talking about her startup, and I heard her say a couple of times how much anxiety she has. But I heard her talk about how she's going to go about putting her business together and the way she's managing her expenses. And I didn't know her at all, but I walked up to her when it was all over, and I said, look, I just want you to know, I heard you talk. I've been in several of these, and you're going to be okay. And you know what? A lot of entrepreneurs, when they have all that fear and uncertainty and doubt, they just want to hear something. Honestly, they just want to hear somebody, it's going to be okay. You keep focused on it. You got the energy around it. You're excited about it. If you stay focused on it, you'll be okay. And if you're here in Dallas, everybody here in Dallas knows like Jerry White, that runs the Entrepreneur Center down here at SMU. He consulted with the first startup that I was with, and he gave us the best advice you could possibly get. He said, you got to stick with it until the fortuitous event. The fortuitous event is that customer or that deal that comes along that legitimizes you and your company and creates success for you.
Yep.
And I was talking to him the other day, and I reminded him of that, and he said, I think what I said was, you got to stick with it until you get lucky.
But it only takes one. It only takes one. And when you're in a startup, you're like, it only takes one to potentially blow the doors off of a company or open up all that different type of opportunity. It only takes that one.
That's right. It does. And so once you find that customer, then you can actually build your company, because that customer or that prospect legitimizes what you're doing. And the other thing is, if you think about what goes on out here in the marketplace, when you start your own company, remember, you're so excited you can't stand yourself. You can't imagine why everybody else didn't need it. The fact is, most of the market is not going to do business with you until they've seen that you've done business with somebody else. That somebody else is what we call the early adopters.
Right.
The early adopters are people that are going to do business with you because of why you're doing it, not necessarily what you're doing. So do you look at Apple? Apple is the best example in the world, because when they come out with a new phone, You got your early adopters who will pitch a tent out in front of Best Buy down here and stay all night because they want the latest new iPhone. But then you got your what I'll call your early majority. They're going to wait a couple of months until they kind of see how it all filters out. And once they see there's no bad news about the new iPhone, then they'll go buy one.
Right.
But then you got people after that, what they call the later majority. They'll go, oh, well, the iPhone 6 is out. That must mean I can go buy an iPhone 5 now because they're cheaper. Oh. Well, if you're starting a new company, you think that you're going to get all these people when really your new company, you have got to focus on these early adopters who will buy from you because of what you're doing, not necessarily what you're doing. And that's the problem with that is like, how do you tell them apart? And when you're talking to them, a lot of times they sound the same. But the thing about it is, there are some old keywords. They'll say, oh, you're a startup? Oh, you're a startup, right? Well, maybe they're interested in but maybe they're not. I don't know. But a lot of times they won't do anything until you've kind of been around a while, until you've been tried and true, because they don't take the risk on it.
Sure. Now, you also wanted me to talk about spend your time on marketing and sales. How many companies do or do not do this?
I would say in the consulting I've done, in the businesses I've been in, near almost all of them do not. And here's what happens.
And now you're talking either dedicated time or even a dedicated budget.
Well, it's like this. Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you look at a sort of a business funnel, it looks a little like a sales funnel. It starts over here on the left-hand side with ideas, and then it goes through some marketing research, and then it goes out the other end. Revenue pops out the other end. The thing that people do not spend very much time on is understanding their market. They may have marketing by that I mean they do outbound marketing, they do trade shows, their social media, they got all that. But I mean the part where you really, really understand your customer and the market you're in. They spend very little time on that. And who is your competitors and getting to know them and going what they do. So when I think about the companies that I've been with and consulted with, I would say all of them struggle with sales and marketing. And so what happens back on this marketing thing is this. You have marketing, you have engineering, and you have sales. And when you walk in the front door, within 15 or 20 minutes, you'll find out that engineering is building something different than sales is selling, and marketing is messing something different than sales is selling, and they're not what I call aligned. So one of the first things that you do is you walk in an organization and you find out that sales and marketing and engineering are all doing different things. And they all know it. That's the troubling part of it.
That's the troubling.
But when I say they don't spend enough time on marketing, they don't spend enough time aligning these three organizations in terms of what is their goal and their missions. And some of them are really, really seriously misaligned. Like a company I'm working with in California that they built this product that's good for organizations of around 5,000 people, but their sales team is out selling it into these Fortune 100 companies that have 50,000 people. Well, I mean, how does that happen? It happens because I spend enough time on their aligning all of their marketing. Now, on sales, I'm going to tell you something about myself that I found to be true. I shouldn't admit. I spent a lifetime, if you take a five-step sales cycle, I spent a lifetime supporting sales in steps 3 through 5. I have done business with all the major telecoms in the world, a lot of the major companies like Motorola, IBM, Hewlett Packard, all of those. 3 through 5 turns out is significantly easier, in my opinion, than 1 and 2. 1 and 2 is where you're prospecting and you're qualifying customers. And what happens is, I'll give you a real world example. I go to an industry trade show that's in my industry. There'll be like 1,200 exhibitors. I'll go through the list and I'll boil that down to about 120 that I need to visit. I visit all 120 of them. And then I'll boil that into 20 I need to follow up with. I'll end up with 2 deals. So what happens? What you have any idea? I mean, I know you do, of how much effort, energy there is into dealing with over 1,000 companies and researching all that. And so what happens is that a lot of smaller companies, especially executives who've done executive selling, they think it's easy, and because they've been doing their lifetime down here in 3 through 5. So what I would say to people is spend your time, if you've got a company,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what your sales funnel looks like, because in order to get a couple of 3 deals out the end, you've got to have thousands of people over here
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that, then you're probably not going to have the sales that you
Mm-hmm.
think you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I'm an analytic guy, so it turns out it's kind of a numbers game. But
Right.
if you look at what these salespeople are doing, people are talking to people they like talking to. I mean, what else? Why wouldn't you? I mean,
Well, that's
why
true. It's
wouldn't you?
very, very true. Yep.
So,
Is there a secret sauce for if you said to a brand new startup, this is the percentage of your budget that you should allot to marketing your company?
well, in startups, it's hard to get down to that because you're spending so much money on getting your product development out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I would probably say somewhere, at least start thinking about at least 10% or maybe even more than that around sales and
Mm-hmm.
marketing. But the marketing that I'm talking about is the research end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not where all the money is spent in marketing. Money
Mm-hmm.
is spent in marketing a lot of times is on outbound marketing, it's the trade
Right.
shows and all. So I would probably limit all of that to somewhere around 10%,
Mm-hmm.
or it's the company dependent. I think that the
Mm-hmm.
people who are running the company have just got to seriously look at what market they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at, I'm going to talk out of the side of my mouth here. You look at something like Red Bull, where there
Mm-hmm.
was no market, and everybody told them there's no market. Well, they went out and created a market. I don't know how much money
Yep.
he spent in marketing, but
Yep.
somehow they got convinced that there was a market for these energy drinks, and so they went and did it. I don't know if
Absolutely.
that really answers the question, but because I see companies spend so little in what I would call the marketing research end of things
Right.
that they're spending all of it into marketing.
Right. And it is tough because that research and of the market, a lot of time and energy can be spent. And while there may not be a result necessarily, what it's doing is it's helping the company streamline
Yeah.
potentially how they're operating, but how they're pitching. So in
Right.
our microwave society, I can imagine that I know the people that I work with, they get a little bit impatient of, well, nothing's happening. It's like, well, there's actually a lot happening because it's all
Right.
market research.
Well, I get that, and I'm going to tell you, there was a company that I was with once that we paid a marketing firm to do this big social media campaign, and so they did, and it worked out really well. They came to our office to tell us how great this worked. They had driven all this traffic to our site, thousands of people visiting our site, and then I asked the bad question. I said, "Well, how many sales came as a result of that?" And there was none.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on the outside looking in, you might say, well, was that a successful campaign? I mean, we spent a lot of money that drove a lot of traffic. What didn't happen was understanding that when somebody got to our site, they had to have something compelling to buy. And you had to have some kind of sales associated with it. So the big thing there is not to confuse motion and action. Because a lot of companies, they like everybody to be really busy, lots of things going on. But going back to this central question is that producing some results?
Right.
And I was in a boardroom just a few years ago, and the board was trying to ask this, our VP of marketing, what was we're going to get from all this money we're going to spend? And his answer was, well, everybody's got to do this. You have to do it. He's talking about going to trade shows and all that. Well, so that's what I'm trying to get at is really think about marketing as in what market are you in, knowing your customers, and knowing your competition.
Absolutely.
Revenue will come out the other end.
And speaking of revenue, now we move on to managing revenue and expenses. How do you recommend an entrepreneur set this up and or execute this as they're beginning and as they go through trying to sustain and maintain their company?
So in almost every company, what will happen is you have a planning year. And in the beginning of the year, what happens is the sales team presents a plan that says we're going to have this revenue that has its hockey stick. Not much in the beginning, but lots of sales at the end. And everybody expects the salesperson to do that. Then what happens is there's an argument that says, but in order to get this revenue, I got to spend all this money. And then what happens is, so the expenses start going up, and now revenue's down, expenses are up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those expenses are fixed expenses. And so when revenue doesn't come when you think it's going to, like you get out here in 3 and 4 and the pipeline is not what it was supposed to be, and
Yep.
revenue's not there and your expenses are high. So here's what I recommend people do is, I'm not saying don't spend the money. What I'm saying is
Mm-hmm.
figure out a way to make all those things variable expenses.
Okay.
Do not, whatever you do, go out and rent an office with a bunch of office space,
Right.
and sign a 5-year lease, because the problem that you have of trying to figure out how to get rid of expenses because revenue is not there is a lot harder than figuring out how you're going to ramp up because you got more customers coming in than you've
Right.
got people to support. I'd rather do that all day long. So, for instance, outsource everything you possibly can. Do not have an accounting team. You can outsource accounting. You can outsource a lot of the outbound marketing, the part that's all outsource all of that so that you can map your expenses to your revenue. Okay. You do not need this gigantuous company full of people sitting around, because you're at the end of the year when revenue's not there. Now you have to lay people off, and now you're in a really tight situation because you spent all your money and you still don't have the revenue. Yep. So that's the thing. Outsource everything. Keep expenses as variable as you possibly can, so that you can lower your expenses to match the revenue that you have. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I can't wait for you to give your contact information, because I'm sure people are going to be calling you like, Mr. Allen, please come and help me. Now, the
thing is, there's a lot of pressure inside the company to spend the money. There is, and people like nice offices. They do. And the other thing goes back to what I said earlier. Nobody can imagine that this isn't going to happen.
Right.
And it will happen, but you got to keep that powder dry. You just really got to stay focused on saving that money and spend it on the things that you need to.
Right. Exactly. Now, this is a really tough talking point, I think, for some people who are entrepreneurs. It is surviving the trough of disillusionment.
Right. Here's what's interesting about that. I personally think, from what I've read and what I've personally seen, that every entrepreneur goes through that, but I have rarely had an entrepreneur admit it. So what happens is, in the beginning, you have wild-eyed enthusiasm about what you're going to do, right? And you're so enthusiastic that you intoxicate everybody around you with your enthusiasm. But then what happens is that your revenue doesn't show up exactly when you think it's going to. And think about these early adopters. You're thinking you're going to have this wild adoption, but so then what happens is you go almost right into, what was I thinking? I mean, why am I doing this? And you're consumed with fear and uncertainty and doubt. So the first thing you got to do is just recognize that you've got to get to these early adopters first, which is only about 10% of your market, and recognize that if you can get to the early adopters, you have a chance to get to what they call the early majority. And so don't get to thinking that you're just going to have all this wild-eyed success. And don't get married to your idea the way it is. When things aren't working out, what you want to do is seriously consider if you need to change or spin your business plan a little bit. So I suggest that people go have an offsite meeting with some of their advisors, or maybe they hire a consultant to have an offsite meeting. And what I mean by offsite, you got to get out of the office. You can't be around all those distractions. And you got to seriously think about what your business is and what it is not, and come up with an action plan. And then the best part and the best advice I'm going to give anybody is, take that action plan that you did over these 3 or 4 days and go back to the office and use it and implement it. A lot of people, and I see this all the time, where they go out and they do that because they think it's something they got to check off, but they come back and they just go back to what they're doing. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
And in the middle of all of this, you have to be the rock of Gibraltar for your team and for your customers. You are the committed person in this thing. Never, ever let anybody see you blink, ever. You are not afraid. You have no fear. You're moving forward. Everybody coming with me, come on. And if you can do that, and you can just be a little flexible around your business plan and stay focused on it, and get through what we call that
Mm-hmm.
the chasm there, where you're going between your. It's called crossing the chasm, but at some point you'll have enough early adopters that
Right.
you'll get the early majority will start doing business with you. And once that
Right.
happens,
Yep.
then suddenly you have a business, and
Yeah.
you're good to go.
Yeah. I call it going through the fire.
It is going through the fire, right? Nobody
You can
ever
get through
see
the
you
fire.
sweat.
It's like, it's so true. It's like you can cry in your closet, but once you go out there,
Right.
it's game face.
Right. When I
Very
walked up
true.
to that young woman, I told her, I said, I heard you talk, and I want you to know you're going to be okay. I honestly thought she was going to cry. I mean, you could just see it. It's inside there. She's so confident on the outside, but you can just see it. So,
Right.
anyway,
Well, you said that to me last week.
Did I say that to you? Well, I know you're going to be okay.
I was like, whoo, it's like you're like, all right, I got it one more day. Tom Allen gave me the kick in the butt that I needed to. I can go one more day.
Well, I didn't. I think most entrepreneurs just really want somebody who probably they don't know to let them know that it's going to be okay, because they don't know.
Right. Right.
All they're getting is their friends and family and customers. Everybody's just looking at them funny, like, "What are you doing and what are you thinking?" And so somebody has got to tell them, "Hey, look, you're going to be all right."
Yeah. Yeah. It means it's huge. That one phrase can take somebody through the next week. You know, you just never know what's going to happen.
Right. It's an amazing thing. You just got to have somebody who can believe in you and be confident with you. But mostly you got to believe in yourself and be confident with yourself. But if you'll go in like these offsite meetings and let people give you a really hard time, that's the big thing. Is you've got to let people that really put it to you straight, ask you really hard questions, and you've got to be willing to accept that. And if you can do that, then I think you have a chance. Now, if you can't do that, then maybe you don't. I don't know. But
right. So you're saying, go in there with like your box of tissues, get ready for it, because it's about to be a bloodbath.
Some of them really are. And the thing about it is, if you can walk through that and objectively listen to what people are saying, you may come out the other end with a very successful company because you didn't get all, tunnel vision around.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I think
isn't the
go ahead.
And the phrase is, most people get in their own way of their own success.
Right, they do. They do. Well, yeah, they do. what happens is, I mean, this is another whole topic, but what happens is they get so wanting to be in control of things that they stifle the whole organization. And so sometimes if you're in a meeting and you see the meeting suddenly tilt toward, I want to be in control and I want to win, versus solving whatever problem you got in front of you, then you got to do something to get out of the meeting and kind of re-get the thing going back to solving the problem without all this. And a lot of that is getting out of your own way,
Right. Right. So the last talking point that we're going to discuss today is developing and scaling the organization.
So here's probably the important thing. When you start your company, you are it. It is you. You're it. You do everything. And I think what goes on there is a little bit of what denies the human nature, is that you're constantly letting go. So when you hire somebody, you have to make a mental decision that you're going to let them do their job. If you're not, and all you're going to do is fight and argue with them about it, you might as well not hire them to begin with. And when you think about growing your organization, so that's the first thing. You're in a place where you're constantly letting go of things, constantly giving parts of your job to other people. And the other thing that you'll find out is, and studies have shown this, and I believe it from my own experience, people that cooperate get a lot more done than people that don't. So imagine this. Well, you just look at football. Football is a perfect example. People that cooperate and play their position the way they're supposed to and cooperate with the other team members are more successful. So a company that has employees that cooperate can have about 70% of effectiveness of their employees. If they're not cooperating, you can get down to in the low 30s. So if I have the same number of people running at 70% efficiency and you're only running at 30, I can run circles around you. And not only that, the business folks will look at your EBITDA and they can tell that you're not a very efficient organization because you're not making very much money. So so you got to be letting go and you got to have cooperation. The next thing is, and this is probably really hard to do depending on your own view of things, but I think about an organization of two kinds of people. There's thinkers and doers. The thinkers are always thinking of something new to do, and the doers are always getting it done. The problem with thinkers is, the knock on thinkers is that they are always, they're never finishing the right thing. They never get finished. Okay. Doers finish the wrong thing right on time. so what happens is you can see different points of view, but if you can get thinkers and doers working together, then you can be golden. And I'm going to give you a real life example of what happens if the doers and the thinkers don't get along. In my industry, in aviation, there was this company called King Radio. King Radio absolutely owned the market. There was nobody even close to them. One of their executives went in one day and said, we need to develop some new products. He was a thinker. And they gave him the You're Stupid award. Hey, we're doing great. We don't need any new products, so go away. Well, he did. And he went out and formed a company called Garmin. Garmin.
Oh, gosh.
King Radio. They now completely own and dominate that entire marketplace and a bunch of other markets. You're probably familiar with Garmin. And King Radio is an also ran. So my point is this. King Radio was doing great, absolutely great, until they dismissed their creative initiators and their creative people to help get into the next market. So you've got to have both. You've got to be able to have creative people around, and you've got to have people, executors around to get things done, but they got to work together in a way that's productive, positive and productive. And they got to cooperate. And if they can cooperate, then you can have a great company. And if I had the real opportunity to meet Roger Staubach here a few weeks ago. And you probably don't remember the 1971.
I saw him on the Super Bowl yesterday and thought of you.
Well, good, because I got to meet with him. And here's what you got to picture. They were riding on the airplane on the way back from the Chicago game. They just lost. And Tom Landry got up at the front of the plane. He said Tom never talks on the plane. Says, and they were 4-3 for the season. And he got in front of the plane and says, you know what, guys? None of the coaching staff is going to be at practice on Monday. You guys are all going to get out there together, and you're all going to figure out how to play together as a team. And you know what? They got in the locker room. And he said Mike Ditka jumped up. I don't know what his position was then. And he just began this impassioned plea about how they all had to work together, play together, and do better. And they went out undefeated that year and won the Super Bowl. That's how much difference cooperation will make in a team and getting the thing done. So when you think about your organization, that's what you got to do.
Yep. I was even watching yesterday, and I saw a player who shall remain nameless have some personal fouls. And I thought, he better get it together, rein in that temper, because if he doesn't, he can take this entire team down with him, and it will be a very quiet plane ride home.
Well, I saw that. And if you think about that, he did something that made himself feel better personally. I'm sure it did. But look what it did to the team. And I actually thought that one of the two incidents you're talking about was going to cost them the game. I just gave Carolina a good field position.
It gave him great field position. I think it was a 15-yard penalty.
Yes, it was. It was a 15-yard penalty. So the last thing I'll tell you about organization is this, and this is really important, is you got to have some kind of construct by which management makes decisions and how they move things forward. And the best example I can think of, I was consulting with a really large telecom company here in Dallas. Now you got to picture this. they brought me in there because they just wanted me to take this thing, which is almost ready to go to beta, and just train the 2 leads into being better project leaders. They've been at it for about 18 months. I get there, and within 2 or 3 days, I find out they're not going to beta in April. They haven't even decided what this thing does yet. And they hadn't decided because none of the stakeholders had gotten together and actually come down with a list of features, functions, and all that. So the first thing we did, and I'll try to shorten this up, is we had to go and put together a feature list, organize a software development group, get a game plan going. And then we had to go to management and say, you know what? You're not going to have in April what you thought you were going to have. You won't have that for another 18 months and another $15 million. So my point is this: you can have a whole room. There were probably 200 people there, and they can all be working really hard, and they can all be doing a great job. But if they're not focused on a game plan and everybody kind of knowing what they're doing, and a management the construct by which you can figure out what's going on, you just almost can't get there from here. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Now, please give the viewers what your URL is and how somebody would be able to contact you.
Well, I'm at Opango. That's OPANGO.com. We're an e-learning instructional design firm, but the reason that Tracy and I are talking is it turns out a lot of our customers we run and talk to, they need a lot of help. And turns out a lot of them are smaller companies, and they find out, in just the process of talking, that we can help them in a lot of ways. So that's what we do. So it's opango.com, and we'd love to hear from you and talk to you. And maybe we can help you out. You never know.
Perfect. And if you would like to book Tom for an engagement, you can contact me at 720-259-6353, extension 101. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I look forward to doing our next interview.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on this morning. And looking forward to our next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.